The Supreme Court will issue several major rulings this morning. That's where we're starting the 7 from the Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Friday, June 27th. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. It is the final day of the Supreme Court's term. Justices will deliver rulings on their last 6 cases. Those decisions will cover some pretty big topics. To give you a sense of a few of them, there's President Donald Trump's attempt to ban birthright citizenship. Another case deals with the requirement for health plans to provide no-cost preventive care. That includes cancer screenings. They'll also decide on the right of parents to exclude their children from lessons that use books on gender and sexuality. And they'll rule whether it's constitutional to make people prove they're over 18 to access online porn. The court this term has already issued many decisions that will reshape aspects of American life. They have allowed states to ban gender transition care for minors. They've also lowered the standard for proving workplace discrimination for members of majority groups, like straight people. And yesterday,
my body, my choice.
Justices cleared the way for states to cut off all Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. That was the sound of protesters outside the court. The final rulings are expected to be delivered after 10 a.m. Eastern this morning, so make sure you check back with our homepage then. Number 2 is a Post exclusive. The U.S. Doge service is set to slash dozens of gun regulations. I haven't told you much about Doge since Elon Musk left the cost-cutting enterprise, but the rest of the team has kept busy. Recently, it sent its agents into the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, also known as ATF. Their goal was to revise or eliminate dozens of gun rules. Their initial target was to change 47 regulations by July 4th. That's an apparent reference to Trump's status as the 47th president. But our reporters found that the team is actually set to exceed that goal. If the plans are enacted, it would be a major win for pro-gun advocacy groups. They have long claimed that ATF has too many regulations. But gun control advocates fear that the changes will more easily allow potentially dangerous people to obtain weapons. A new report found that President Trump made big gains with non-white voters in 2024. That's number 3. Yesterday, the Pew Research Center released an in-depth study of the 2024 presidential election, and it makes for some pretty hairy reading for Democrats. It found that Trump won white voters by 55% to 43% over Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. That was identical to his 2020 margin over Joe Biden, and it was similar to his 2016 margin over Hillary Clinton. But in 2024, he had a big gain among Hispanic voters. Nearly half of them supported Trump last year. That's up from 36% in 2020 and 28% in 2016. Trump's support among Asian voters also grew, from 30% in 2020 to 40% last year. His support among Black voters was much smaller, but that grew too. Harris's loss has reignited a familiar debate among Democrats. Was their defeat driven by shortcomings in voter persuasion or in voter turnout? According to this survey, it was probably a bit of both. Number 4. It is still not clear what the U.S. strikes on Iran achieved. Yesterday, 4 Trump administration officials briefed senators on the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend. On the one hand, Republicans left the briefing saying it reinforced their belief that the strikes were effective. Trump has repeatedly claimed that U.S. bombs obliterated Iran's nuclear program. But on the other hand, Democrats said it appeared to them that Iran's program had only been set back a few months. That echoes the findings of a preliminary assessment that was leaked this week. At a news conference yesterday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth lashed out at members of the press over that leak.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes.
One senior defense official told the Post that Hegseth's angry tone was, in their words, not a good look. Number 5. Prosecutors made their closing arguments in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The music mogul is accused of sex trafficking and racketeering. After a more than 6-week-long trial, prosecutors made their final pitch to jurors yesterday. They argued that Combs used power, violence, and fear to run a criminal enterprise. Combs faces the possibility of life in prison if he's convicted of the most serious charges. Today, Combs' defense will make its closing remarks before the jury enters deliberations. Defense lawyers have argued that Combs' accusers were willing participants in his drug-fueled sex parties known as freak-offs. If you have questions about this case, you can ask our reporters directly at 11 a.m. Eastern today. Find a link to do that in our newsletter. As always, that can be found in our show notes. It's yet another sticky and gross number 6 for you today. More extreme heat is on its way to ruin your weekend. Depending where you live, you may be getting a lovely little break from extreme temperatures today. But don't get too comfortable. For the Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, and Northeast, above-average temperatures and humidity are expected to return this weekend. And that's going to stick around into early next week. Meanwhile, the Great Lakes will suffer from Sunday. The Northwest will get its turn to sweat then, too. And another thing, if you live in the Northwest, forecasters are predicting that you will have the highest chances for above-average temperatures in July. Congratulations. And at number 7, a slightly terrifying fireball appeared to explode over the southeastern U.S. yesterday. A driver in South Carolina captured an amazing sight on their dashboard camera yesterday. At around 12:24 p.m. Eastern, an exceptionally bright meteor soared across the frame. Other witnesses reported hearing a booming sound. That suggests the meteor exploded in the atmosphere. If any of the meteor's material reached the ground, it probably landed somewhere near the Georgia-South Carolina border in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Admittedly, that's a pretty big area. But if you're keen to go out and find a space rock today, that is where you should look. And let me know if you find one. That's the show for this week. The associate producer of The 7 is Taylor White. The staff writers are me and Jamie Ross. John Taylor is our editor. Additional editing by Christina Quinn. Copy editing is by Melissa No and Thomas Haliba. Mixing and sound design is by Jim Briggs and Justin Garish. Our theme music is by Edith Mudge. Renita Jablonski is our director of audio. I'm Hannah Jewell. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend. I'll meet you back here on Monday.